And apart from that's quite a staggering statistic if you think about it. You know, we could spend hours telling you statistics about how many gardens there are in the UK, but we won't. But apart from the health and the community health, you know, the community and the well-being benefits, which finally are being acknowledged if anybody has bothered to read the health and environment plan. As I and countless organic kitchen gardeners know, if you get your own hands organically dirty, it really is a fast track to organics. And I actually do, but it's not also, don't forget, if you're gardening organically, that's less pesticide use, better soil, you know, better soil fertility, better protection of wildlife, etc., etc. And although they've never been natural bedfellows, I'm sure, and I think we really are sure about this, that the more farming and gardening can work together, the more the organic sector will benefit. As gardening can work together, the more the organic sector will benefit as a whole. So basically, there are two bites of the cherry in the organic sector. You've got the organic farming, but you've also got organic gardening. And I'm really pleased to invite Steve now, just to give us an overview of what this actually means, particularly, it's not just individual gardens, it's all kind of community spaces and initiatives. So thank you, Steve.
Right, good morning everybody. As it says, I'm Steve Thompson, I'm the Operations Director of Garden Organic. Just to give you a heads up on what's been going on recently, some of the data I'm going to talk about has come from the Gardening Trends Report for 2018. And what you'll start to see coming out of that, gardening's nothing new. We've been doing it for thousands of years. There is an established retail market that services the garden, the homegrown industry. But what we're seeing now is a shift in trend. Seeing a huge shift in trend by consumers demanding more organic products. Okay, and that's becoming that's a totally different piece of market. Did a piece of research for us 4 years ago, looking at the research, and the retail sector was closing down, saying there's no market for it, nobody wants it, it's really difficult to engage with. That's shifting, and it's starting to shift now. So we're seeing positive shifts away from the use of chemicals in gardens. Okay, we're seeing increased consideration for wildlife in gardens and beneficial wildlife in gardens, looking at organic principles and practices. Okay, we're seeing understanding that grow your own, that we all know reduces carbon footprint and can reduce food miles. But that's starting to be more universally accepted outside of the organic industry and organic movement. We're also seeing increased interest in vegetarianism, veganism, plant-based eating. These aren't just trends that people are starting to jump on the bandwagon. We're seeing real shifts in these movements. We're gaining traditional ground on traditional methods. Okay, 75% of gardeners in the UK are starting to now avoid using chemicals. And examples: the slug pellets. Looking at metaldehyde, slug pellets have been in favour of ferrous sulphate. Much better for the environment, still questionable, but better than the previous version. 46% of people increased in use of organic fertilisers, increased demand for organic feeds in the retail sector. These are consumer-driven demands. The sector is having to react, and they're having to put aside more space, more time, and more effort to provide for these people coming in and servicing their consumers. The other thing we're seeing, and we've seen a lot about it, B&Q were one of the first to go out and say that all of their plants are responsibly sourced. They've got bee-friendly ranges. The RHS have now started to do bee-friendly ranges. You're starting to see this drive that the people are starting to think about the environment more, and they're also starting to think about what it means for the garden. Vegetable plant sales are increasing. Okay. 43% of gardeners under 40 grow their own vegetables, so this is the millennium element, but also 32% of gardeners over the age of 60 grow their own food. They're starting to see this massive shift in people. The groundswell is not being the organic people, it is just becoming a populace, and more people are getting involved in it. There are over 90,000 people on waiting lists around the UK to have an allotment. 10 years ago, allotments were struggling to fill up the space, and the land was under pressure to be used for housing in other areas. Now we've got waiting lists around the country. And 82% of the people in the UK on a survey have asked if they can have more, have been surveyed, suggesting that they want more wildlife in their garden. Okay, so this shift away from traditional methods. Where are we growing? We're growing everywhere, and Claire's probably going to stab me, Sophie's going to stab me in the back in a minute. So we're growing in lots of spaces, we're growing in gardens, we're growing on rooftops, balconies, in spare space at the side of a road, windowsills, communal spaces. But we apply an organic definition to all of that, which is very commercial. Yet you can use your principles and practices to grow on a windowsill, on a balcony, on a roof terrace, but it will never be certified as organic because it doesn't meet the regulations. But the practices and the principles that they employ and the way they do things are all fully organic, apart from the principle that it's not in the ground. So do we need to do that in a domestic environment? That's maybe a debate we can open up later. Is there a need for a more domestic or a less semi-commercial environment? Our communities are growing, we're coming together and we're engaging and actively engaging as communities around gardening and growing. At Garden Organic we do some work with housing associations. We can work on a brand new housing estate and there's no sense of community, but there are people living there. As soon as we start engaging people in gardening, communities start to flourish and grow. People come together, they interact, and they develop their social interaction around a garden. It's a very, very convivial way of engaging with people, leaning over a garden fence and talking to people. We do it on allotments. We're seeing the rise of community farms. We're seeing the rise of community-supported agriculture schemes like 5 Acre Farm that we have down the road and Canalside in Leamington. Workplaces are starting to take on this. We've just started a project with HSBC in Birmingham at their brand new headquarters where we're putting roof terraces in for their employees to learn how to grow food and to learn how to interact and to reduce their stress in their workplace environment, using gardening and growing as a method of doing that. We know the issues around the pressure on public parks and the public purse and the way that people are spending money. Actually, they're great spaces, and we're already seeing the rise of mini allotment sites coming into community parks and into public spaces. We're seeing guerrilla gardening going on. People are just taking over spaces and taking it on, and the local authorities are having to react. We're also seeing gardening coming in as part of urban planning. You look at some of the urban planning regulations that come in now, there has to be green space, there has to be potential for people to engage in the environment, and that brings the wider question of, is it just planting loads of trees? That's no longer acceptable amenity-style planting. Communities and people are starting to demand more effort and more space where they can engage in growing. Why do we grow organically? We know there are physical benefits from getting engaged in low to moderate exercise, and gardening is a great way to do that. It's a great exponent of getting people out into nature, engaging in the green environment. We know there are mental health benefits. There are lots of studies, and again, we've done research at Garden Organic around the benefits of gardening and why it works, and drawing in all those external kind of studies that show their piece and bringing them together. It's cost effective, okay? It makes accessible organic vegetables to people on low incomes, and we're doing a project in South London at the moment where we're working with people who are on incredibly low incomes, who are all at the risk of food poverty. And one of the things they've come back to us and said, organic veg is an aspiration, but actually when we can grow it ourselves, we're not only feeding ourselves and making our diets better, but we're actually aspiring to something that we never would be able to afford in our day-to-day life. Let's not underestimate the kind of where organic sits in our commercial retail sector. It still sits somewhat at the upper end, and for people on low income, that's really difficult for them to want to improve their health, but then can't do it because of the barriers with cost. We're improving food security. We know where our food's coming from. We're looking at being able to control the food that we eat, and we're also looking at the production methods. Grow your own increases choice. You walk into a supermarket and you want to buy tomatoes, you'll probably get 1, 2, 3 or 4 choices of tomatoes. Heritage Seed Library at Garden Organic, we've got over 80 varieties of tomatoes. Okay, so you choose what you grow from seed or you grow from plant, you get a greater choice than what is presented in a supermarket. Reduces carbon footprint and environmental impact, which I think I'm preaching to the converted on all of that in this room. So going forward, the future opportunities, we need to continue to look at the benefits and health and wellbeing benefits for people, plants and the environment, but particularly the people end of it. We've been remiss in some respects of not trying to tie that together, and the organic sector has got a real part to play. We're seeing all the infants about use of insecticides and herbicides and how that can potentially be stored in our food and it can be stored in our bodies. We need to push those health benefits better. We need to develop public and industry messages to encourage organic as the norm, and it's great to hear what, you know, Sophie's saying, and I'm sure we're going to hear some more about that this is normal now. This isn't the kind of the Green Brigade or the Kooky Brigade at the side. We've actually normalised organic. We need to push on forward with that. We need to continue people to educate people about what organic is and how people can become more organic, how people can take control. Remember what I said at the beginning, we're seeing a shift in retail. We need to drive that. We need more people to be demanding that within our sector. Okay, we need to monitor the indicators. How do you measure if more people are becoming more organic? It's a really difficult kind of thing, so let's measure that and understand it. And also we need to define organic for all of our sectors. Having one broad brush definition may not be the way forward, and it may be a barrier to engagement for people.
Thank you. So we've now just increased our market share by about 50%, I reckon. They say the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and so for our final talk